For this project, I chose to analyze John Sibelius' Symphony No. 6, Opus 104. Symphony No. 6 was considered in 1918 but was not completed until 1923. It was first performed February 19, 1923, and it was conducted by Sibelius. The symphony has 4 movements. It is considered a modern post-Romantic period piece. Sibelius talked about a possible 6th symphony in 1918. He described it as, quote, wild and passionate in character, dark with pastoral contrast, probably in 4 movements, intensifying in a dark orchestral swell until the main theme is drowned, end of quote. He did speak of a possible change to the plan of the piece, which did eventually happen. This next quote sums up what we know today as the 6th Symphony. Symphony No. 6 is nature painting, uncluttered by civilized detritus. This is the most serene symphony of Sibelius's, and it is also one of the least performed. John Sibelius, a Finnish composer, was born December 8, 1865 and died September 20, 1957. He played violin and composed as a child. He composed using the idea of nationalism, which is apparent in many of his compositions. He was established in the 1890s as the leading composer of Finland. He composed for international audiences about 1900. He traveled and composed until the First World War, and after the war he did very little composing. It was during this time that he composed his 6th and 7th symphonies. He lived rather isolated for the last 30 years of his life, and he stopped composing completely in 1929. Now we'll get on with my analysis of the first movement. The first movement of the symphony, Allegro molto moderato, begins with a lyrical phrase from the strings, to which the oboe and flutes respond. This simple dialogue provides the main theme. The notes from the opening belong to the Dorian mode, D, E, F, G, A, lacking only the notes B and C. There is a clear connection with Sibelius' trial lecture of 1896. Quote, the oldest Finnish folk tunes are based on a tonal system which lacks the tonic and the dominant as we understand them. They also lack the finalis of the old Greek keys. There are simply 5 notes, D, E, F, G, A, which become additionally combined with 2 notes, B and C, as the melody grows more expressive, end of quote. The music also has echoes of the Middle Ages or the style of the Renaissance composer Palestrina. This piece utilizes the 2-2 time signature and uses the Dorian mode on D. In my research, I found that it has been analyzed to be in D minor. I personally think it is more reasonable to analyze it as using the Dorian mode because of the lack of key signature to indicate D minor and the absence of any accidentals that would indicate such a key. Here we have the instrumentation. The first violin, second violin, and the viola are the only 3 sections that play for the first 27 measures of the first movement, and these 3 sections present the main theme. The other instruments enter at different points throughout the movement. The oboe and the flute take the melody after the first 27 measures, and it kind of gets passed between the 2 sections for a little while. Here we have an example of the use of the Dorian mode, especially on look in the first violin part. That line, you can see there aren't any accidentals to indicate D minor or any other key, and this passage starts on D and works its way up through the scale. To me, this is a clear example of the use of the Dorian mode. Sibelius does use syncopation, and really see that at the beginning of the movement. Accidentals are not used as much at the beginning, but he does use them more at D, which that's an indication of a 20th century piece. Here's the example. Almost every single note here has either a sharp, flat, or a natural sign in front of it, and that continues on for quite a few measures. Here Sibelius does something a little bit different. At I, he uses a F major 7 chord, kind of indicating a change to F major, because he also puts a flat sign in at the beginning of each of the measures. And so through for the next 10 measures, he is utilizing the B flat. And then after the 10 measures, he returns back to the B natural and places a natural sign at the beginning of the measures and uses a C major chord. The beginning of the piece is a little bit more laid back and peaceful and calm, and then at B, things kind of pick up a little bit. They get a little bit brighter and livelier. And the strings keep this continuous movement, this continuous energy from B to about I, where things kind of start changing a little bit back to the beginning and kind of calming down a little bit. And then at the poco allargando, things get a little bit more solemn. He uses the bass instruments a little bit more and uses the tremolo to get that solemn feel. And then the movement ends on a D minor chord. That is the end of my presentation, and I hope you enjoyed listening to Sibelius Symphony No. 6, Opus 104, First Movement.